Welcome back to I'm Still Here. This is Heather Jose, and today I'm really excited to introduce you to my best friend and kind of one of my partners on my whole journey with metastatic breast cancer. So if you haven't been here before, in 1998, I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and it changed absolutely everything for me and all the people around me. So today, my friend Christy is here. Christy has been with me from the start, well, and long before cancer ever existed. So Christy, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So Christy and I grew up together. We have known each other forever and ever. And I don't know, do you have any background that you'd like to share?
I don't remember a single day without you. You know, we grew up across the street. We've gone through every phase of life so far together.
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to cancer, I would say, you know, when we were young, we spent every day together. I think we from getting into a little bit of mischief, but mostly just playing and having fun outside, inside, didn't matter what season, just always there together. I had, you know, we've talked in the past about how neither of us have sisters, and maybe we were just meant to be neighbors so that we could kind of fill that role for each other. But when I was diagnosed, I was 26 and you were a similar age. But we were kind of in a different phase, I would say. Like, we were both married and we were living in different parts of the state. And we weren't talking every day at that point, you know, and I think we were just kind of figuring out what, you know, this young adulthood looked like and things like that. But I don't even know really how you found out about me having cancer. So I was wondering if maybe you could share that with us.
Yes, it's kind of a funny, weird story. My mom called me and said that she had heard this, and I just think my brain couldn't take it. I was like, don't tell me stuff you heard, you know, and never hung up on my mother and never since. But
so you hung up on her that day?
I hung up on her, and I think my dad put on his coat and went across the street and talked to your parents, and I really just think I couldn't wrap my head around that at all at that moment. So I kind of planted the seed. It was swirling around in my head, and Mom probably called me back within an hour and said, you know, indeed it was true. And I was totally taken aback. I knew right then and there I wasn't going to call and cry on you. So I cried for several days. And you probably don't remember, you gave me a book like when I graduated. I don't know if it was high school or college. Like, I remember I fell asleep with it in my hand. I cried myself to sleep, you know, like I don't even think I knew. I don't know where exactly in the timing. I don't know if I knew how kind of bad the diagnosis had gotten. I don't remember that at all.
It probably didn't really matter, right? Because I mean, cancer, when people hear cancer, they're scared. But then, of course, you know, we had to elevate that all the way to metastatic breast cancer.
Exactly. Yes. So I did. I think I cried for several days. Like, it wasn't like sobbing, but tears just fell down my cheeks. And
so what do you think you were thinking about? Like, did it just feel like?
Actually, it's funny that you say that. You know, I think it had occurred to me that we would lose parents and we might lose spouses or siblings. I was never supposed to lose my best friend, you know, like that had never occurred to me. Okay. And we were supposed to go, again, we've been through every phase of life. We were supposed to have gray hair and rocking chairs or something someday and talk about the good old days. And I just think it had never occurred to me that anything could happen to you. So so finally I stopped crying and made a call to your house, and Larry's dad answered the phone because you and Larry were out somewhere, and I was like, well,
probably partying. No, I'm just kidding.
No, right. So I just said, well, tell her I know. She doesn't have to tell me, because I sort of thought that would be a really hard thing to tell people. And so And, I knew there was a lot going on, and I think I called back again. I had no idea what to say or do, but I think I thought about, what would I want? And I
Yeah.
always feel better when I have some specific people around me. So I thought, well, if I can make this any better, I'll be there. So I didn't know what you needed or
Yeah.
what. I had no idea what to offer. I just thought I would
Yeah.
get you.
I
So
think the intuition to be able to tell her that I know is so huge, because like in the midst of all of that, I was getting phone calls where sometimes I had one time one of Larry's friends called, I answered the phone, again, back before cell phones, right?
yeah,
And he said, can I talk to Larry? Like, so I knew that people were finding out about things, but it was just, to have to go through it, to all of these things were really, really a hard thing for me. So I think just having the intuition to be able to say, I got that part done. Like, we're done with that part. What's
yes,
the next conversation, right?
yeah.
It was really helpful. I don't really remember talking to you like on the phone or how that all came to be, really. I just remember like it was December, right? And my
Right.
family, so there's kind of the three families that grew up together in the neighborhood, and our family always went to Florida. But your family and the other one would do a little Christmas get together. And so since we canceled Florida that year to stay home and figure out what was happening, we ended up coming to Christmas at the neighbor's house. And I just remember it was really hard. It was good, but it was hard. I mean, it's like these people that I don't think I've spent more time with any other families, than with you guys and the other one. But just, I remember like, I was at the point where everything was kind of about cancer, or even where people would say something and then you can almost see people stop and go, oh, we shouldn't have said that. Because like we kind of take for granted that like we're going to live forever, or there aren't going to be things that interfere with our plans, or you know what I mean? And
Right.
it just was really, I remember it being really tough. But I do think it was maybe there at that party that you told me your next plans, which,
Yes. Yeah, so I never talked to you. I don't know what I would have done if you were like, nope, thanks, I'm good. Because like in my days of crying, I quit my job. I've never been so sure of anything. I'm not the most decisive person on earth, but I knew in my soul that I was gonna do what I could do with you. And so I quit that job, and so I said to you, I'm like, well, I just left my job. So if you need anything or what, I'll be around, I can do
yeah,
stuff there. And again, had no idea what we were going to do, but I
right,
thought if it were me, I would want someone with me. So
right. So at that point, like that might be a good time to ask, like, what did you know about cancer prior?
nothing. I was terribly afraid of it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd really known anyone. I knew people lost their hair, they throw up, and it can kill them. Or I think I might have thought it usually did. I don't even
Yeah.
know.
I think
Like
there's
I
some
knew
pretty
nothing. I
good
didn't know the
consensus,
difference.
especially, in the late 90s of what we thought cancer did, right? So,
Yeah. I didn't know the difference between chemo and radiation. They were words I'd heard. I did
yeah.
not know what either one of them was.
Yeah, no, I think bald, throwing up, maybe skinny, like,
Hospitals. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Those are
Yeah.
kind of like what
The
we
thing.
thought of. So, yeah, so I mean, I think as the great thing about that was that we figured out fairly quickly that when you start with cancer treatment, like you start in there, we had been busy, like solid busy for probably a week and a half, 2 weeks with all the testing. Like, so we always had something to do. Larry was with me most of the time. My mom was helping with Sydney, all of those things. But then you start treatment and like you get treatment and that's one day. And then 3 weeks later, you get treatment again. And it's like, okay, so how do we fill these days? and
Yeah.
what takes over. And that's where you stepped in so huge, to just be with me, either physically or like on the phone, right? Which I think, I don't know if everybody else has this relationship, but we have a relationship where we talk a lot. And it's been for years on the phone, right? We
Yeah.
don't see each other super often, even though we're not that far away from each other, but like we can carry like our conversation, our relationship by phone calls, right? So
And people are shocked how little time we're actually in the
yeah,
exact same place,
yeah, yeah,
because we do have such familiarity with what's going on in each other's lives.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's where it kind of just started, was like I would do chemo and Larry would be with me, or Larry and my mom or somebody. But then like they needed to go to work. Like, it turns out we're going to do an episode on finances here soon. So like, some
And it's
people
so
go to
weird,
work.
life goes on. It
I
feels like
know. Yeah,
every,
that's the thing. And I think that was the stuff that I think like my diagnosis affected you enough that you were in that same mindset as I was, of like, how is the world still spinning? Like, how is this happening? How are people happy? How are people planning? How are people, all of these things, right?
in my crying days, someone decided I should go to the mall. It was the end of December,
Yeah.
like, I gotta like stop crying. And I remember being on the escalator at the mall, and I'm like, wow, no one even sees that I still have tears on my face. And I'm like, there has to be someone here that can help. We need some help. Here,
We need some help. We know nothing.
Right.
Right. We're going to try anything. Yeah.
The
So
world was going on.
yeah, exactly. So I think, it started just by us, like a lot of times I think in our relationships, I'll say something where it's like, I'm gonna, and you're like, I'm in,
Yeah.
so, for me, I think it started just with, okay, well, I'm strong now, so I'm going to try to stay strong, like, or I'm healthy now, so I'm going to try to stay healthy. So it started with, walking, and whether we walked together or walked separately, but both walked, whatever that looked like. I think you were just sort of my partner in crime in figuring out kind of all of those things that I could do, maybe to kind of keep a strong and healthy body, right?
Yep.
And the other thing with that was that like you didn't think it was crazy when I was saying that, because the rest of the world is like, you have cancer, you're sick,
Right.
and I'm like, stop telling me that, right? Like,
I felt fine. Someone just told me one day.
I know, right? Like, that's not how this works, So I think, some of it just was for me about kind of transforming daily habits, and everything that I was transforming, you're like, I'm in, let's go, right?
Yeah.
So that led to, I think a few, some field trips, right?
Yes.
And I think, you want to talk about some of the places we went instead of to the mall?
Yeah, we started, I don't know, we went to the grocery store. We looked at things we'd never looked at. We read more labels than we had ever before. I mean, I think we were trying to control what went in, control the
Yes.
things we could control. So we were looking at nutrition, although we didn't really know exactly. I don't think we were super focused at first. And so, yeah, we still hit the mall a little bit. We still did our boat rides and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
sometimes there was chemo involved there,
Yeah. Yeah. I just think, I mean, when we initially, I think for me, it was kind of physical stuff. And then like in terms of working out and things like that, but also the nutrition. And I think you were like probably my biggest partner in that. Although my mom was the one who actually found Dr. Block. And when I look at timelines, I was thinking about that. Like I was diagnosed the end of December. I think we kind of quickly realized like, oh, I mean, Midwestern diets, like we could eat better. I was realizing I might want to eliminate like all the dairy, which for you, super easy.
Right.
Lactose
intolerant my whole life. So I'm like,
so
hey, I don't
some
like
of that you were just like, oh yeah, well I do this or I don't do that. Like I don't use anything or here's a substitute kind of thing. I was like, oh, okay.
And it's
Now I
gotten a
gotta
lot
try your
easier,
weird milk.
right? And it's gotten so much more available in the time frame that we were trying.
Oh
We
yeah.
were just starting to be big when we were looking at it, I think.
Oh, so just starting. I mean, even now you go to any store and look at all of the alternatives for milk, and it's crazy. I mean, and I live in a rural area, and my little store even has alternatives, which would never have been the case back in the day, right? Especially in, Michigan, like where we farm and agriculture, all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, it was interesting, but we got a little guidance when I went to Dr. Black, and you went with me.
Yeah, it's so impressive. It was so, I'd never seen anything like it before.
Yeah.
The kitchen and the waiting room and tea, and we're like, what is this? Treadmills. I'm like,
yeah, people would do, actually, I don't know if they still do, but would actually do chemo while walking on a treadmill. I was like, whoa, this place is unbelievable,
Blew my mind.
Yeah.
Cloth gowns. That was probably one of the first places we saw cloth gowns, I think. Like,
oh yeah, all of those kind of things that were like, oh, they're actually really
thinking about the person.
The person, yeah. And I think the people surrounding them, right? Because they all would be like, wanting to know who could do things with me, or how this was going to be embraced. And I think, like, when I look at different relationships, like Larry, he didn't do everything with me, but he didn't care how I was, you know what I mean? Like, some nights he would look at the food and go, no, thank you, I'll get a pizza. I feel like there were most times that you were just like, I'll try anything,
I think we sort of decided we wanted we wanted to figure out comfort foods that were still healthier. So we were kind of like trying to make it. I do remember one, especially kind of not our favorite dinner. It was you, me, Larry, Sydney at your table, and we're all just kind of pushing our food around. We're like, okay, but not something we're gonna look forward to. Sydney didn't care.
Yeah, well said. Sydney always knew exactly what she wanted to eat, as long as we had the right brand of orange juice in the house and pasta as a standby. And I feel like red peppers, those were all, she's kind of her own girl right from the start. So that was easy. And I mean, when we look at kind of even the food stuff, she was 14 months old when I was diagnosed, which I guess would have been kind of transitioning into like dairy type of things in most cases, but she just re-stopped it immediately. It was like, nope, no more milk. Soy milk is what she used at the time. And I don't know, it's just interesting. But so we did have preparing for the stem cell transplant. I knew that I was going into the hospital. I was going to be there for quite a stint, and hospital food is what it is, and so we wanted to eat healthy, and we had found a book. Do you want to take over from there?
It was like the Garden Burger book or something, wasn't it? It kind of had a basic salad that really went into a whole lot of burritos and different meals, and so we again went shopping and bought a whole lot of vegetables. And it must have been when were they harvesting stem cells? So you had done that, or I went with you one day. We must have gone shopping after that, and we were cleaning all the vegetables at my parents' house. I don't even think they must have been on vacation or something, because it was really just us, and we had music, and here we are washing all these vegetables we've never eaten before in our life.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because you said basic salad, and it was a basic salad, except that there was every sort of leafy green in the world in it, and most of them we had never tried, and it turns out a lot of them
we don't really care for.
I'm like, I do like spinach spring mix kind of thing, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a big all the bitter greens, whatever. So
yeah, I don't even know what all was in there. So, but
I remember it kind of got to be so big that we couldn't mix it in a bowl, so we had to put it in a big bag. Just go crazy. So
yeah.
I had thought about in preparation for the stem cell transplant was that your mom is a big quilter, and I had sort of learned to make a basic quilt prior to that or whatever. So I think another thing that we shopped for was fabric.
Yeah.
And I ended up making a quilt for my hospital room because I remember you came up to help me turn it and do all that kind of stuff. And
We had 2 sewing machines. I didn't know how to sew. You taught me how to quilt, which you thought was funny.
Your
'Cause my
mom
mom's
that?
a quilter, yeah. But so of course we procrastinated. And so
Yes.
we are like, well, okay, it's like Sunday, we got to get this done. And
Yeah.
I think we were laughing about it at midnight and
Yeah.
chimes on the floor early the next morning, and pretty much finished it up and time to get back and go.
Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. But yeah, I think all of those things, that every kind of idea that I was like, oh, I want this, you'd be like, all right, let's do it. Or, oh, I want to try this. Okay, let's do it. Right. And that's just how it's been for a long time. But let's fast forward a little bit. So we get through all the treatment and all of those days. And I think, one of the things that you had said before was like, you were always really good at just kind of killing time with me. So I think that was, something that we can always kind of sit and chat and solve the world's problems. Or
my superpower. We have a lifetime of things we could chit chat about, or we had such familiarity, and that was just a lucky circumstance, I guess, for us.
Yeah. So, of course, you kind of have been through all of the transitions with me. And one of the things that I had done fairly early on was kind of set a goal for myself that I would live to see Sydney go to kindergarten. And I'll never forget that day. Like I put her on the bus, which is really funny because honestly, it was one of the only days she ever rode the bus. Like, Larry's a teacher. He just started taking her to school after that or whatever. I don't know if it's just kind of the iconic, like, this is how you go to kindergarten singing or whatever, but she got on the bus and drove away and I fell apart. Like, it just was so monumental to me, and and you're the first person I called, and I go ahead, and I just remember that conversation because
you never fall apart. So I was a little surprised, but at the same time, I knew that was what we had been striving for and hoping for. And, you remind me that I said, we just need to set another goal.
Yeah. I just said, I don't know what to do. And you're like, just set another goal, which is just awesome and kind of funny. I mean, like, I'm an occupational therapist by training, like, no kidding, set another goal, like, achieve, don't, right?
But we help each other see when we can't, that's part of I feel like with my compass, you help me navigate the world. And
yeah. So, so let's talk about, like, how has cancer impacted you? What is it?
Gosh, and I swear, I don't know where I would be or who I would be if I think I'm speechless. Like, I guess it helped me see my life more clearly, and it wasn't exactly going the way I wanted and where I wanted. I ended up getting a divorce, and we didn't see the world the same anymore. And I totally changed my career. I went back to school and became an exercise physiologist, and I got to help people. I never wanted to work with a high-end athlete. I wanted to work with a person who's just, trying to figure out how to fit it into their life. And so I got the pleasure of helping people try to find a love for exercise in spite of a busy life. And, and so I really, everything has changed for me since then. And I think I've just looking life and death in your early 20s is a little unusual. And and remember when we were packing up pretty much to leave the hospital after the transplant, and we were having this conversation that we had things figured out. I was like heading into a divorce, and you were, we
had no idea what was coming next.
Yeah, and I think we thought we had this figured out, and we were on our way. But
well, I think we just had I think it's the perspective of, like, life is about kind of the relationships, the life that we have, maybe not chasing sort of the things and everything else, right? It's what we realized, I think now I look at it and we just had there was no balance to it, right? It was we were all just like, we're just about experiences and, recognizing that every day's a gift. Whereas like life creeps back in there in terms of, okay, well, how are you going to support yourself?
Right.
All of these kind of, and how do we fit this together, this perspective that we were given, but also, the need to, like, you can't, yeah, the nitty gritty, and you don't stay there. You can't stay there all the time, right? Like, it's exhausting, I think. So
I thought it was interesting, like with the intensity, everything was so clear, I think.
yes.
And I've even wished for intensity since, but
Yes.
I know it's bittersweet, like,
It
so,
is.
like I just kind of trust now that if it's intense, I'll know what to do, or I will rise to the occasion. And, like, so sometimes when I'm not clear, I'm like, well, it's okay.
No, I agree with that. I think it does. I think that's so true. And I remember thinking that about flowers or about clouds or about conversations or all of these things. And then you just go, it does kind of, go away a little bit, but you need it to also, like, you can't live there. I don't think.
I don't think so. Right.
Yeah. So I feel like cancer has just impacted us in so many ways, but I also feel like there's so many good things that have come from it. So I'm happy about that. So I think there's just been kind of a million things that we've learned from all of this, and it's definitely changed our perspective, right, in it. But what do you tell people who like deal with cancer or other things?
I try to tell your story often because it's such a good one, and it started out seeming so bad, and I've said I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I really do know good things have come out of bad things, and
Right.
trust that they're there, or look for those things because they really are there.
Yeah.
And I've even, like, years after I must have told my boss's boss's boss, I got an email from someone that I barely knew. And she said, I remembered your story. And when my sister was diagnosed, she's like, I was terrified and I never would have set foot in that hospital, but I went with her to her first chemo because I remembered. And I was like, wow, like, so I tell the story because I hope if someone finds themselves in that position that they go, there's always, I got a chance,
I swear, it's like my mantra. So you're telling me there's a chance, right? I just think when you're in it, like, you never would choose it, but when you're in it, there's choices to be made and there's ways to deal with it. And I'm so appreciative of you coming alongside me. I don't know. One thing that I've talked about over the years is that a lot of times people will say, let me know if I can do anything. And that, while well-meaning, does nothing, right, for people who are in it. So I think you showing up with the intent that you showed up with was super helpful. And I'm so glad that I feel like it rekindled our relationship in a way that, is everlasting at this point. And I'm lucky to have you as a best friend. So,
and I'm lucky too. I've always felt that.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on. I'm still here and I appreciate the time and the nerves and all that kind of fun stuff that go along with doing this kind of stuff. But I know I was looking through some things and we have done some things together like this, but most of it's been writing, things like that. So, maybe we'll show up again together, either here or somewhere else. But thanks for being with me today.
And thank you for having me. And I just couldn't be more glad that you are still here.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.